Welcome back to Language of the Soul, Conversations on Healing and Growth. I'm Ben Umstead.
And I'm Martin Perkins.
So many years ago, when I was still living in California, I was on a road trip with some dear friends. We were only a few hours outside of Los Angeles. And my friend who was driving had a particular moment where they started crying. And there was a degree of embarrassment because they were doing it in front of other people. They didn't know why they were crying. And I said to them, your tears are a gift. And I truly, truly meant that. I have such admiration and affection for people that can feel into that space and just cry. Our society, our culture often gets twisted up in knots when people who have that great intuitive gift to go and feel with those feelings. In this moment with my friend, I felt this swell of gratitude and love and appreciation when I said, your tears are a gift. And those words, that resonance from person to person, brought about a deeper letting go on their part, a letting go into what we might call melancholy.
And melancholy, energetically, the life slows down, that there's a depth, as the expression goes, there's an air around someone who's feeling it. Depending upon how they're being within themselves with the feeling, it can present as, say, sad or depressed, mournful. If we're judging them harshly, we might see it as pathetic or unfortunate. They may be tearful. It can have a heartbreaking, and in some cases, and for some, it can be disturbing. But in many ways, those synonyms I just shared are more about how the world receives melancholy rather than the individual themselves. The individual is, I offer, in the midst of a letting go. It's a way for our souls to allow us to get to a grieving place, to let go into ourselves. We don't need to know why. Often, why is only reached once we've let go over and over again into melancholy. Melancholy energetically is deeply associated with the season we're in right now here in Maryland, which is autumn, a time to reassess, to slow down, to feel into what the doings of the past year has reaped in our lives. And melancholy, in many ways, allows us to let go into those feelings, not necessarily let go of those feelings, but let go into them. The human perception of grieving is that it's about letting go of something. And the truth is that grieving has two primary components. There's letting go of, but there's also letting go into. And what we're letting go into is whatever and wherever we are in that moment. And melancholy allows us to get there. Now, melancholy, like sadness, and in particular deep sadness or chronic sadness or what some call depression, it's often met with resistance. It's, I don't want to feel this way. I need to get on with my life rather than recognizing that it is a crucial part of our lives. Whether we're in the autumn season or we're feeling the energetic of the fall, or through the cosmology of the five elements, we're looking at it from the metal element. And the metal element can show up in any season. In any given day, we can be anywhere in ourselves if we're really staying very in touch. So while melancholy is associated with the fall, with the metal element, it need not be exclusive to that time of year. It just so happens that the natural world speaks to us very clearly in the language of melancholy. The falling of the leaves, the cooling of the air, I was in the woods earlier this morning, and there was a particular section of the forest where, based on the trees, the colors of the leaves on the ground was so rich that I was it kind of took my breath away. I was like in this sea of reds and yellows and purples and oranges, and I was just celebrating that. And yet at the same time, and the truth is that in large part, I'm speaking of melancholy today because it's what I'm feeling. I'm well practiced with melancholy. It's an energetic expression that I have a lot of practice with, to a large degree, a comfort with. I've made friends with that feeling. I can embrace it, frankly, quite necessary for me, especially being a healing practitioner and someone who facilitates growth in group settings. I often feel what other people are feeling, and if I'm not actively practicing a willingness to feel the sadnesses, to feel the emotions that are going on around me, then I'll take those feelings on as a negative rather than a way to process life and an acknowledgement that as a healing presence, it's necessary to allow my experience of those moments to find expression through my own version of melancholy or sadness, and doing it inwardly so that it doesn't find expression through resistance in my relationships. Because what I don't process inwardly is going to find expression in my interrelationships with the world.
Hmm. This is very key. Yeah, this is a very key thing for all of us to be in relationship with, right? Within ourselves. Anything that we do not process within our own practice is going to create resistance in those relationships. Key relationships out in the world, it might just be with somebody you pass on by with. Having that recognition is important, but the recognition isn't the practice itself.
The recognition is an initial first step. The other part is being willing to breathe into those feelings, to journal into those feelings, not once, but over and over and over again. To allow the heart to have its aches for our sake, but also for the sake of others. It's it's an acknowledgement that we're all connected. So, of course, what the people around us whom we care about, we're going to feel. We're going to carry with us the feelings that they're feeling. They're going to find their way into our psyche. And if we're unwilling to slow down and let go of life's hustle and bustle, then life becomes a reactive soup where we really don't understand why it is that we're feeling what we're feeling. It just comes up. And, one of the things I learned along the way in my own inner practice and working with others is that, there is no neat file cabinet around our feelings, and there's no chronological order. So they're neither organized nor chronologically understood. They just come up. And if we have a practice that allows us to feel that sense of, in this case, melancholy, then there's an outlet for the aching heart.
That outlet for the aching heart is a really beautiful, simple, direct way to put it. That is what my friend was seeking that day when they cried. And when there was that not only acknowledgement, but celebration that they responded to in a way where that melancholy could be felt and felt into, as we've been discussing. It doesn't replace a practice because the practice helps you really slow down, like you say, from the hustle and bustle of that reactive soup. But it is important to note that if you are feeling into your feelings, everyone on earth has this potential. I want to really relay that to our listeners. This is not about breaking things down and comparing them. It's really about discerning where you're at in your own process. And so if you're hearing our stories and our experiences today and going, I do that. I cry and I don't know why. And I feel clearer and actually have a sense of the why afterwards. That is definitely your soul tapping you on the shoulder saying, you're on the right path. Go deeper. Create a consistent practice where you're going to be slowing down and it's not going to be so unexpected that you begin to cry. Of course, it's going to be unexpected at times in our lives. Tears have a certain way of doing that. But your sense of yourself and the feelings that you're feeling that are parts of yourself, parts of a greater soup, not a reactive soup, but an empathic soup. It's just natural. It's natural for where you are. So when you talked about taking the walk and relaying melancholy to the autumn and all the leaves, the beauty of that. There was a part of me as you described the beauty of the purples and the oranges, the yellows, and just this incredible sense of the world in a moment of change. There was a part of me that went, and in that celebration and in that excitement and joy of the beauty that you were seeing, there was a soup of your feelings and others' feelings that celebrating the leaves was actually a part of that soup too.
Exactly, that I could feel that sense of beauty at the same time that I'm feeling an incredible sense of sadness. That the sadness and the beauty need not be held separately, but that they can dwell together with us if we allow enough space in ourselves for that to be so. And it takes practice. It takes a willingness to delve into a practice of knowing ourselves through whatever stillness practice we have, through being restful, through being in whatever tool we want to use. I use journaling significantly, and in my work with students, we do a lot of writing. That doesn't mean that's the only way, it's simply a potent way.
And there's so many potent ways. It really is about the self-expression. And you spoke about the relational aspect with other people, with the outside world. It can go from feeling resistance to that reactive soup. The other part of it is the journaling that you speak of, the potency that's there, and the potency that can be in creative expression that's really just for that
Right.
drawing or painting or dancing or singing, anything that really is just going to be for you in that moment in the way that you need to express.
And I know for me, one of the primary outlets is making things, building things, whether it be buildings in the sense of renovating or adding on something, or working with glass or other types of mosaics, or in my writing. It's all these outlets give expression to not just creativity in that very broad sense, but creative life force that dwells in all of us, is that which has always been and always will be, and that it's an integral part of us. To some degree, we don't have to define it through dogma nor doctrines. We define it through our actions, our choices, our words, how we are in the world, right? And it's really more about how do we practice life rather than how do we think about life. And melancholy, in truth, is a very potent doorway into that creative life force.
So you began describing melancholy through a lot of external lenses and a lot of negative lenses, like it can be disturbing or unfortunate or pathetic. When we look at melancholy, it can be empowering. It can be affirmative. It can be graceful.
Right. You know, you and I both being lovers of film, how many times have we seen in the midst of a pivotal moment in a film where a character will begin to move their body, often with extraordinary grace in the midst of challenging moments, whether it be literal dance or other expressions of movement that kind of speak to what they're feeling. And that notion of grace, both receiving grace but embodying grace as well, right?
So what you bring up with Grace there and this sense of Shoshin comes to mind, a beginner's mind, right? Takes me back to 2011 when you and I saw the film Beginners, directed by Mike Mills, starring Ewan McGregor, Melanie Laurent, and Christopher Plummer. And it follows McGregor's character throughout his life. It charts the current story of him taking care of his elderly father, who has recently come out as gay, and these twilight years where he's celebrating himself fully and he's dealing with an illness. McGregor's also fallen in love at this point, and it's going back and forth between earlier points in his life, his family life, the behavioral patterns that he picked up on and inherited from his parents, and learning to let those go. You talk about dance and letting go in film, and there's a particular moment in this movie where Melanie Laurent and Ewan McGregor's characters are dancing in this hallway of a hotel.
Right.
I bring up this movie because it's a lovely film and I think people should go ahead and seek it out if they can. But I bring this up because of our subject today with melancholy. We finished watching the movie, Martin, and it was December. It was winter time and the wood stove in your house was going. And we both were just so over the moon about the film. And I said, do you think that we responded to this movie in the way that we did because we're both inherently sad? And I phrased it in such a way where I didn't really know what I was saying. I was digging at something deeper, but the words were a little surface based. And you said, well, I don't think it's necessarily that we're sad people. I think it's that we feel deeply. And like the characters in the movie and their experiences in the movie, there's this beginner's mindset. And so I bring that to you today with melancholy, feeling the melancholy, letting go into the melancholy means about being graceful, gentle, playful, having a beginner's mind, and being willing to dance with that melancholy when you feel it, not later after you've resisted it, but really, truly when you feel it. And it can be so hard to do because we go, I've been feeling this way. And we've articulated it to someone in our words. And my question to everyone out there is, how have you been feeling it when you literally feel it come up in you? You say yes, and what happens then? How do you let go into it?
Mm. That's beautiful, Ben. That's a great prompt, right? Let people just feel into what the moment is calling them to.
So important.
Yeah.
If you'd like to connect more with Martin, you can go over to his website, martinperkins.com, and check out all the various things that are there, including the book, Language of the Soul, A Path of Simplicity in paperback and audiobook format. You can check out the back catalog for these podcasts. You can check out the course, Language of the Soul, and you can check in on what we're doing with our movie club. The next film is Ava DuVernay's Origin. You can watch that with Martin at Simplicity Farm if you're in the Maryland, DC, Virginia area on December 1st. You can also watch that on your own time and then join the discussion on December 5th via Zoom. So do go ahead and sign up for the movie club. It's totally free and a great way to engage with melancholy amidst many other things.